Hi Piccolo players, this video is on Ravel's Piano Concerto, the first movement, where we have a big solo right at the beginning. I'll play it down once and then go over how I practice it, any tips I might have, exercises I use in the low register, etc. Lots of little things in here. The first thing is that the entrance is really weird. So if you have not played this before, I would try and play along with the recording. Beat 1 is silent, beat 2 is a slapstick. So it's 1 slap, go, dun 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 dun. It's just a little strange if you've never played it before. Generally speaking, the whole thing, even though it's very low, all the notes are short. Even the running eighth notes, tucka tucka, and do double tonguing. You're not gonna be able to single tongue fast enough. So at the very beginning, I have to watch for myself that my left hand wrist stays very still in the D, C, A, C, D. Every great once in a while, I'll play through it and I'll kind of have a little bit of, I'm not missing the notes exactly, but it's a little unsteady sounding, and it's because my wrist moves a tiny bit. So I always just have to make sure that my wrist here, the whole top of my hand and wrist, it's not tense at all, but it stays very steady. I think it's because all fingers on to all fingers off. It can be a little bit unsteady in holding the instrument. So there's that. When we get to that G half note with the accent, I try to rely a little bit more on my vibrato in that accent. Yeah, just to create life on the note and not hammer it so much. So ideally you're going for another difficulty is getting off of the tie on time. So I would practice this a lot with your metronome on. Ta-ka-ta, ka-ta-ka-ta-ta. I always do coming off of a tie in double tonguing like this. I do ka-ta-ka-ta-ta. And then the next phrase, ka-ta-ka-ta-ta-ta. But some people do ta-ta-ta-ka-ta, whatever. But you need to have that planned out in advance. Don't just let your tongue decide these things in the moment, because it'll probably backfire. And as if you didn't have enough to worry about on that one G with the accent and your note splitting and the vibrato, is that the intonation tends to be quite sharp on that G. So try to bring it down and have or for myself, I know I try to have my vibrato be in the depth of sound as much as possible, going ta-ka-ta, like just kind of sitting in it. That's what I'm thinking about anyways. Going on to the second line of this solo, this is my difficulty spot for my fingers that I really have to drill. And for some reason, I don't know, I can just get a little glitchy in there, and I'm pretty sure it's because of the C, D, C, D back and forth. What I do, which you can take it or leave it, but it might be helpful, is I do C, 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 B, C, D, all normal, and then the next C, D, I leave this pinky up. I don't put it back down for the C. I mean, it's a millisecond of movement, but that extra putting the finger down is enough to make it a little unbalanced sounding. So again, I do C, B, C, D, all normal, and then the next C, D, I just keep this finger up. So anyway, this string of eighth notes right here, all short, even though there's no dots, it's always played taka 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 taka, like that. Very controlled and very steady. Going down to this low D, try to avoid that automatic flute sense we have where when we go down to those low notes, low D especially, we try to do the Galway giant sound at the bottom. It's just not going to work on the piccolo, or I have not found that to ever work for me. As soon as you try to create great effort in the low register, like really opening up your jaw and dropping down for those low notes to get it really thick sounding, that works on the flute, but it just never works on the same way on the piccolo. What I try to do going down to those low notes is keep everything very relaxed, and you do kind of open up a little bit, similar to the flute, like your jaw and stuff, but not as much. And the embouchure hole, the aperture, still needs to remain fairly small. I mean, obviously, you're in the low register. It's not as tiny as like the high register as the high register or the middle register on the piccolo, but it's still very small compared to what we would do on the flute. I think what helps to create that kind of good low sound on the piccolo is to make sure you still have some resistance in the air speed. Clearly not as much as the high register or the middle register, but some sense of resistance still. Another thing that might help, that helps me sometimes, is to think about my aperture opening down here in the lower register being more horizontal, like just kind of lowering my corners down, and the aperture hole is just more lengthwise, but not big. So instead of going down to the low D, instead of like really trying to ba-da-da-da like you would on flute, I just try to keep the notes as centered as possible. Okay, so some ways to practice the difficult passages, the middle line of this, making sure they're all kind of the same. What I'm going for is that it's just like a string of notes that are more or less in a line. What you don't want to have is like, you know, like this changing of having to adjust your embouchure a whole bunch. I always do my hard section going to the G. So from here, I do that a lot. And then you can start where you left off. And you could do any kind of combination of that. I just sort of made that one up. But you could do 4 notes. That's like the classic way to practice. Another way to practice that might be helpful just to get the tone quality that you want is to slur maybe a group of 4 or something, and then tongue it, trying to get that same tone quality, because the tone is easier to get when it's slurred. Etc. Just make sure when you do the tongued version that you don't try to keep your air going real legato, like matching the slur in that way. So you do not want, you know, just real taga-da-ga-da, trying to keep your airstream the same. So it needs to be short. Anyway, that's another way you could practice it. And then when you arrive to the middle D, very short. It has the staccato there, of course, but just it can be very clipped because you need to get to the accented Gs. These, of course, you run into the danger of splitting the note going up, but just try to tongue the note with the body of the note feeling like you're sitting in it. I feel like the air is going straight down. This last line, this particular measure does not have the accent on the G. And rather than having the measure before do more accent than what I just demonstrated, this one be very non-accented, if there's a way to do that. I always just kind of play it softer, like that. And then when you do the next measure after that, it just, again, gives the illusion that, oh, wow, you really brought those accents out, when really you just did not do any accents at all on the measure before. So these 3 measures, starting here, really, when I just got to the non-accented measure, I just played it a little softer. And then going down, same thing. When you go down, you have the forte marking, try to ignore that, because it gives us the feeling that we need to do you know, and just really have a huge sound, and you don't. Plus, if you're playing this for real, meaning not an audition, the first flute comes in, I think, right here at the B natural. So you can just chill out right there, even if your low notes don't come out, because the first flute's going to cover you. How I handle the crescendo is I do not do anything until the last B-A-G-E-D. Then I kind of and if I'm playing it in a real orchestra situation, a non-audition, I like to do a little movement, just a little bit, so it gives the illusion that I'm really crescendoing to the low D. Okay, have fun practicing this solo. Hopefully some of the things I went over will be helpful for you. Happy practicing, and thanks for watching.